Good morning, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. I just wanted to put this video up and fix up a couple of things. I had made a mistake in respect to cycles or unnatural cycles of the planet, and I put this video up last just to have a bit of a break from that, and I wanted to come back here and just show you whether or not you actually saw what was actually happening in this. I am videotaping my uploaded video again, but what you'll see in this portion here, it's really quite amazing here. Initially it comes out like a UFO sort of a thing with a plume of smoke coming out the back here like there. Alright, it gets very, very sharp, and then it changes from that when I move the light again into a like a machine, one of the ones that you see digging like out in our mining industry, the big, huge, big disc spinning wheels with the big scoops on the end of them. That actually is exactly what that turns into there, but it's mounted on a UFO and floating in the air. If you watch this here, it actually comes out into a real big digging machine, and you see the dust flying up at the back here, like here, right there. See how it's digging all the side of the cliff face out? It's really quite amazing, and that's and then you can see the light shining out underneath here onto the ground, and this is digging the side of the cliff face out here. So it was really quite amazing. There was that part I wanted to show you, whether you actually sat through all that to see that, but there's temples and all sorts of things that come out in this video. I'm sorry about the guitar work, and by the way, I will mention that there's backing tracks in that. I did play the guitar pretty poorly, the lead part, but the backing tracks, I'll put a link to the backing tracks that were in that on that video very shortly. But I wanted to show you one other thing. This was just another part of that video. I thought I'd just stop it here. And I'll press play. I want you to just watch this little portion here, right there. Okay, and I'll press play. You just watch what happens. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Can you see that? At points in time it gets very, very clear that you can see two eyes there looking out above this black, above the black mark here. Really quite an amazing thing. There's many things on this, the imagery on this, it's just amazing. It sort of comes out to where it's like a temple in here with the steps in that portion there as well. I just thought I'd show you that. For anybody that hasn't watched the other videos at this point in relation to the planet's movement and the 4 unnatural cycles that are put on it by extremely accurately directed meteor impacts that rotate our globe around the sun, is done so because of a situation we have where the single sun we have now has one horizontal band of magnetism that drives global tsunamis, as well as slow and speed the globe depending on how it's rotating. So you need to go back and look at those to understand why we are discussing what we're discussing now. Now I'll move on, because what I've done is I made a blue, and I'll show you in the Tirumali Jain complex in India on that temple wall again where I made the blue and why I made the mistake. Effectively, I had the impression it was it is a 96,000 year cycle to complete the whole process, and thinking, well, the only way you could have 4 different cycles is to meet each requirement of the, you know, how the sun can rotate, or I mean how the earth can rotate around the sun, which is what we went through. And this is not the case. I made it blue, and my mistake was that I had no interpretation at that point, or an understanding that they would shift the planet's rotation from where it is. I couldn't see a reason why. Okay, and it is in the understanding of the slowing of the globe or the speeding of the globe, then I understood why. That there is two rings of rotation that the Earth is placed on, and therefore the two we're looking at are being valid are only A and B. Okay, so in other words, the Earth is always spinning in the direction it's spinning here. Okay, so it's spinning anti-clockwise, but in one it's going anti-clockwise around the Sun and the other clockwise around the Sun, and that is the only difference. These are, I am of the belief now that C and D are a non-existent sequence. The only thing that they do is rotate the planet against the Sun, either anti-clockwise or clockwise. So when we come back to the temple, this is where I made the mistake, thinking that this was 4 individual cycles. Well, it is, but I totally misunderstood the reasons why. So what's actually happening here is we're shifting out. This is moving out physically here as a ring further away from the Sun. That's exactly what it's telling us it does. I didn't realise that at the time, and it's a pretty amazing thing. I also did make a suggestion that the crisscrosses here are the installation of Atlantis, and whether or not it was required in these outer ones, because I also want to discuss today how far away this is. This is one representation that puts one ring. If we look at the distance from there to there and from there to there, they are linear. They are the same distance. So if we're 93 million miles away from the Sun on our cycle now, well, it makes sense it's going to be 186 million miles to go to there. This is one representation of that. I will show you some more, but before doing so, I wanted to discuss with you, like I said, let's discuss whether we're going the right way. We're finishing this cycle spinning the globe anti-clockwise, and we've had our thing in the middle, right? The next unnatural cycle is the one that drives us out to here laterally, lying flat with a precessional wobble of less than 12,000 years. It has to be able to reach both extremities. We get out here and we're still spinning around the globe anti-clockwise. We're still spinning around the Sun anti-clockwise. We then do our period of time here, which is 12,000. We then do change the rotational spin of the globe by doing our half loop. When I say a half loop, it's the plane of our planet, or rotational plane of our planet, moves in respect to the Sun and rotates 180 degree is the plane of the planet Earth that moves, and the result is that we end up coming up and spinning around the Sun in the opposite direction. That means that here we would be spinning clockwise around the Sun, not anti-clockwise as we are now. We go back in, we're still spinning anti-clockwise. We had the one we had 6,000 years ago that put us back to anti-clockwise again. And so that works. It works exactly, and that's how it does it. It only ever goes out here and does either that it's going to go around the Sun anti-clockwise or clockwise, and it does the same in here. And the reason for that is so that we can understand, we've done the calculus in here already and said that the speed here, when it speeds up, is going to get to a point where we have a rotational time. One full rotation of the globe is 8 hours. That's where we're heading in our 24,000 year period we're coming up to now. This one, when you do the calculus on it, is not as bad, in that the calculus calculates, instead of it being 50 or 15,000, our 24,000 period here ends up being 24,000 there ends up being about 15,000 years. Our 24,000 years here ends up being about 21. The problem here is this one. That there, and the period of time it takes, would indicate that the globe is rotating in about 72 hours. It's 3 times longer, not 3 times shorter, as we're seeing in this one here. And I'll show you the calculus for that. These are the calculus I've got. If we look at the picture in the sky, I'll just do an insert now. This is what was written in the sky not long after I'd put a video up stating that the Earth did have what appeared to be 2 places of rotation around the Sun, that they seem to move the planet for some reason or other, and now we're seeing why. And this is why, like I said, why I made the mistake with these sequences in the first instance. If we look at then the writing in the sky and say, okay, well that was a pretty, pretty good outcome to happen within about 4 or 5 hours of putting the video up, I believe. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty certain it was only within hours of putting the other one up about having 2 rings of rotation that we left and calculated in the other one that the outer ring was 53,443 years. We took 6,000 away, which is our unnatural cycle in the middle, which left 47,443,000 years. And now we're on the other side of things where 46% now is our 24,000 year period, which leaves the 54% when it spins in the opposite direction. So we've now got 26,000 years here over a 12,000 year period in our time, in our time that we get now. See, what they're talking about here when they say this is in a 12,000 year period, in the time we have now, it has 26,000 years. There's 26,000 years of real time to cover there. So your globe is slowing. You've got nearly, and this is, like I said, you're going to get this, is going to be 3, it'll be a third. And like I said, these are mean figures, they're not, speeding up or slowing down. So what we're seeing out here is, I would expect a rotational speed going in that direction. When we spin the globe around the Sun in an in a clockwise direction, when we're further out, it slows to being 3 times like a 72-hour day, as opposed to on the inner ring, we are getting a situation where it's 3 times quicker, going in, an anti-clockwise direction. It's telling us about how the planet acts and reacts on both. Just exactly why they go and put it out there, other than that, well, I don't know. That's a very unusual, I guess we'll find out when they get here to do things. I guess the one other thing is, I'll show you what it may be. If what I've said about these Egyptian reliefs are in actual fact as I suggested, the representative of the unnatural cycles, this one here being ours, where we are looking at no requirement, this is the part I wanted to come back to. I've sort of not really understood why I had this person here with no person here, okay, and why that one's like that, and why the other one has got somebody, the same person here. I'll show you that one in a minute. But what I think we're seeing here is a representative here of the cycle that goes out, being it is initiated, the north pole of the planet is pointed out, and it goes trajectory for 6,000 years. It spins round the Sun with a flat axis like that on that cycle. That's what I believe they are telling us. When they get back out there after 6,000 years, they come back and stand the planet back up. I would expect there it's a very small comet, probably getting there at the very right time for the 24 degrees tilt on the axis that would have had to be in a position like so that the small comet is just enough to lift it up as soon as it's in plane with the Sun, so that the plane of the Sun will then lift the planet up. And that's why they come back and say they have to assist in the lifting of the planet here. Well, no, they don't lift the planet up here, right? So you haven't got this bloke lifting the globe up here, but on this one you've just got this, them coming back to put Atlantis in. I'll show you the difference between that and the other. So this is ours. This is, they come back to put Atlantis in at the end of our cycle. So that's us. This is the one going out there, and I'll show you the other one now. Now I wanted to bring your attention here to this. He's in this one, he's not in the others. And this one does different things here. He lifts the globe up and installs Atlantis. Alright, so this is coming back in. It has to be. And if it's coming back in, like I said, when you come back in plane with the sun, this man here is dealt with. We won't go into that. We've gone through that before about human sacrifice being an issue, and that will be dealt with each and every time you come back in plane with the sun, which is what we're about to do. But I misinterpreted this, I believe. I believe what we're seeing there, he's saying it doesn't come in unassisted all the way, on the way back in. When you point the North Pole back at the sun and start it off, I'm seeing that possibly as him saying it doesn't get all the way in there on its own. We have to come back and give it a bit of a hand to get it back to where we started, back into back into the inner ring of rotation, the one we're on. That's what I'm seeing possibly there as a reason why he's there. That it doesn't come in and do the whole lot on its own. I'll show you one other thing I thought maybe the reason for that. I'll just bring you back to the temple for a short moment just to remember. We are looking at a distance here from inner to outer ring being double. That's what it's saying here. Let's see if we can find that somewhere else. Now, I've showed you this plate last time and discussed with you that what we are seeing here are the rotational changes of the Earth, which is 48,000 years apart. And then we looked at this as being representative of how many and how long, and estimated over 7 million years that they had in actual fact come and maintained the planet as they had. What I want you to realise though is that if we're actually talking here about the inner and outer ring, and that it's actually doing exactly that, this is just yet another one that is exactly the same ratio. If the sun is the middle, well, that ring there, which is 93 million miles away from the middle, is the same distance this way out here to the other ring again. So it too shows us a double ratio, that it would be beyond 186 million miles instead of the 93 or 94 million miles from the sun that we are currently on now. So it's saying we push it out, or it is put sideways and allowed move out through the solar system till it gets to that point and they stand it back up again. So if I bring us back to Google Earth then and we have a look at what I believe we're getting told here, it's a movement on getting us out and laying us flat, and that is what I wanted to talk to you about. In the event where you get a comet as big as this one coming up here, they're saying, in my opinion, we are doing this with one big comet. In this instance it was huge. I believe there were two that actually did this, but this is what created the Himalayas, and we see the one down here in Australia scraping across here and chopping this part out of the top of Australia and pushing all this land mass this way. This is what they say they do to our planet, and it lays it flat. But what I think happens when it gets laid flat here, I'll just lay it over this way and we'll just have a look at what I'm saying they say they do. This is the message that tells us what they do. Once they do this and lay it flat, it bounces. That's what they say they do. It bounces off the top plane. When it hits the plane of the sun, it bounces the axis. We're in our instance where we are left with a 24-degree tilt on the axis like this. This situation, when they do this, they don't stop it. They just let it go over, and I believe what they're doing there is letting nature take its course to a degree. And the reason it's released from the plane is that it's allowed to topple over, and it bounces off the top, bounces off the bottom, and then by the time it actually goes back to the top, the axis is bent enough for it to just be released from the plane, and it takes up a totally natural movement away from the sun because it is laid flat. That is what I believe we are getting taught there. I could be wrong, but that is what I'm seeing we are getting taught. And when we are saying, when we want to get out to the other plane and lift up, it comes back into a point where it's at 24 degrees like this, comes back into the plane of the sun when it gets to out there, when they're ready to lift it back up at 186 million miles from the sun. So they then do a Tunguska event or something of that nature, just to get it lifted up enough so that the sun's magnetic pull then will straighten the axis when it's on the outer ring as well. Albeit this is another crop circle, I did want to just mention this as well. I was wondering whether this was representative, if this is being the inner ring of rotation and this is being the outer ring of rotation, whether or not we are seeing in this instance as well the other that I showed you on the Egyptian relief. Whether this is an indication here that to get back in it's got to get another help here, that they have to push it back in again. There's something else that has to happen on that transitional movement back inward. Yeah, one other quick matter was that just if this is in actual fact reflective of both the inner and outer ring, it too is, 50-50. So it is the third thing that we've looked at now that I believe we are seeing here, though, a planetary motion that can't be explained by a cycle that we've just explained. I've taken my mistakes out and still we can account for the rotation of the Earth the way it is now, going through that cycle, but that doesn't account for that. They're saying when they lay it flat and spin it out, sometimes it goes that way and sometimes it goes that way, and that'll be dependent on the rotational, the rotation of the planet here around the sun and the rotation of the planet itself. So what I actually think we believe by seeing here is, albeit we see a 96,000 year cycle in the temple, it is in actual fact done both ways. And if I went back to Google Earth now, so if we just quickly come back to Google Earth and understand that if this is what we're actually seeing, what I'm saying here, they're saying they do. These are huge, huge masses of land. Eventually, you're going to end up with, wanting to move land masses the other way eventually. I mean, you've got to have the land masses to move. So whether or not they then, after 96,000 years or however many times, they turn around and say, okay, well no, it's time to do it the other way, and they'll do it this way, So that might be what they do. They then do the 96,000 year cycle with it like this. I don't know. I'm only merely saying what I can see in their message. But certainly that crop circle would indicate, without doubt, you go off in the other direction, and to do that you have to be spinning. It's not, that's one where it's going out, right? And you can't have that cycle the way we just went through it in the temple as a 196,000 year cycle and achieve the direction in two different ways without one of those ones where it gets laid flat, like so, being brought up like so, and then doing the 96,000 year cycle like that, because that's the only way you can get to spiral off in both directions. You have to have the Earth rotating in the opposite direction. So I would expect that is a possibility as well. I just wanted to throw this in for a suggestion. What you're actually looking at here is characters from what is called the Indus character set. I'm not so sure that that's actually what we're looking at here. I just thought I would put this in because I saw them and thought, to me that doesn't look like a character. They are looking like their stories within a you know, an emblem or a symbol that means something. I don't understand why we look for a character. I mean, if it was a Japanese character, you're not going to sit there and look at a Japanese or a Chinese writing character and say, that's the letter A, B or C or whatever. They are phrases or stories within symbols in a lot of that type of language. Why do we not think the same here? Because to me that's what it looks like. It looks like, you know, the cycles. We do these cycles, we put down cycles. The first one we hit moves planet Earth upwards. And then the axis starts to tilt and creates, you know, is that what you're seeing? The other one where we lay flat, we bounce it. The cycle is 6,000 years long. How many squares are there? How many marks? There's 6. There's a cycle that lays flat that still has 4 marks like that written in the one in Egypt. Are we not seeing the same thing? We're seeing symbols. There's 4 cycles, 2 initiated upwards, 2 initiated downwards. It's the same. So I don't know, I think we should probably look at this and maybe rethink what it may or may not mean. You know, it could be very, very relative. Some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but certainly to me, some of them seem to be very, very much related to the planetary cycles to which we refer. You know, these ones here have got 3 lines on them because we create a situation where we have a tilted axis. And we have the tropics being created. When we come back in line with the sun, our tropics disappear and they no longer exist because our axis straightens up. You know, that's what I mean. There's some of these things could mean that as well. So I just thought I'd put that in for food for thought. I just thought I'd come back just quickly to the rock as well and just let you know that I've still got 17 written there, as you can see. Still got the highlighter there at the bottom of South America. And it still has the highlighter also. I'll just move that just for a minute over here to where I believe we're seeing a depiction of the Great Australian Bight there. That's how we actually found the comet in Western Australia, as the marks that used to be on that part of the rock. I'm sorry, I know that's vibrating a bit, I'll just refocus. As you can see, we've still got the pyramid shape here and that bright mark there, and I'll just turn this around this way. Well, we must have got something right. You know that real bright building? That was there only less than 10 seconds ago. It just disappeared. So something about what I've just said is right. It might be the fact it's got to go round twice. And you know, that big silver thing that we had there has just disappeared. I'm not kidding. That was only there less than about 2 minutes ago. I put this under there. That silver white thing was there. It's now gone. So something I've said is correct. Like I said, I'm still curious as to why I've still got the pyramid there. That was one line that actually got drawn right in the middle of us doing a video like this. If you wanted to go back and look at the programmable rock video, I know that sounds bloody stupid, but we've seen that line get drawn on this rock whilst we were doing it. And now, having said what I just said, that white line just disappear, or the silver building thing that was there is now gone. So I would expect that what we're seeing, well, what I've just said to you is correct. You know, that maybe the getting back part is another, you know, that something else has to happen to come back in. It's because that's the thing I've said that's a significant difference, and that's disappeared in that time. So there you go. One other thing I'll show you. Now I'll probably just finish up now. This is some of the last video I put up called 3 Rocks, and this was off that plain white, you know, river rock, opal river rock, and you can see down here some really quite interesting things come out down here. Seems like there comes up with some sort of temple complex on it. Especially, and I'm sorry about this banding, I've worked out what that is. I get up early in the morning to do this sometimes, and the banding is because I've had the heater on, and the electric fan in the heater, even though I've had it down low, has actually been what's caused these problems here. So that's why it sort of got better as I was doing this towards the end. But yeah, you can see down here, you can see sort of a temple complex come into there, pyramids and such things. Really is quite amazing, some of the imagery, and like I said, I apologise that you still are, to this point, getting me even now just videotaping the TV screen, which is what I did with these in the first instance anyway. But when I get up, I'll get better at that. Okay, so I've now worked out what it is that causes that issue. Just means I get very cold when I do it. So, but anyway, look, that's all I'll do now. That's just enough, like I said, from a point of view of the planetary motion. Really, I'm not a planetary scientist, I'm not a physicist, I'm merely portraying to you what they say they do to our planet. And they have to, because coming into plane with the sun is a very, very, very major problem since our other star left us. So, you know, that's it is an amazing thing that we've learnt. I've learnt, that's for sure, all leading from this rock. So, really is quite amazing. Thanks very much for your time. This is Brian Whitten and ET Art. Have a nice day. Bye bye.